Hey guys, Bobby here, back again with another video. In my last video, I told you guys I was going to be talking about the job that I had recently left, and that job is Lush. I started my career at Lush back in 2016 through what was probably one of the weirdest hiring processes I've been through. While trying to get the job, I was invited to a hiring party, which was more like a group interview. At this interview, they asked me really weird questions like, what was your favorite product and why it described you as a person, as well as other things like what was my favorite color and why. During this, they also had us do things like practice the selling cycle with one another. As someone who had never shopped at Lush before, this was very odd to me and I did not know any of the products. After a couple weeks of stressing, I found out that I finally had gotten the job and I was ecstatic. That was until we had to do training. Training consisted of learning every single product in the store and knowing why that product was good for certain skin and certain hair, and also knowing what was inside of every product. Now, I've watched some other YouTube videos of people and their experiences with Lush, and mine was a little bit different when it came to this training process. Instead of it taking a couple of weeks before I was actually on the floor, we only did 1 day's worth, and that was about roughly 5 hours worth of training, and then I was thrown onto the floor to shadow someone. Now, with my lack of product knowledge, I was not ready to be on the floor at all, and in fact I shadowed the person for a couple of weeks. While I was shadowing my person, I started to notice that the company was more about selling and less about making sure that the customer got exactly what they needed. When I was finally put on the floor, I had to make sure that I only used open-ended questions and that every customer was able to see every part of the store. Now, my store was a higher volume store, which kind of brought this sort of pride that you got to work there, but at the same time, there was a lot more stress. And a lot of the customers weren't very pleasant to be working with. In fact, a lot of them were rich and they just did not want to talk to you. They didn't care about you as a person. They didn't care that you even worked at Lush. They just wanted to go in and get their bath bombs. And at another job, this would be something that's perfectly okay and acceptable. Well, you wouldn't have to worry about following the customer around and asking them 300 open-ended questions. When a customer says, "Hey, I'm just looking," that's exactly what they're doing. They're just looking. So if you ask them a question that can easily be ended with a yes or a no reply, you would kind of get hounded for it. Now, some of those who are floor leaders, which isn't a sales associate, but it's not a manager, they weren't super pushy about the open-ended questions. If you messed up a couple of times, they would forgive you. But there was one floor leader in particular that I remember always made me feel less of a person and not as an equal, because I would never get anything right in their eyes, and they were constantly grilling me about everything that I did. Whether it was demoing, selling something, asking questions, I never did anything to the fullest extent that I could possibly do it in their eyes. And they would always say things like, "Well, did you demo that on them? Well, what else could you have demoed on them? So why didn't they buy the product? What kind of questions did you ask?" Now, it gets to a point that when you're talking to a customer, you can just tell they don't want to be bothered. And so a lot of those questions, if I wasn't working as hard as I possibly could, they would have been really good questions. But when I'm talking to a customer and I'm asking them 500 different open-ended questions about their day or where they're going or what they've been doing, and they're just not giving me any answers, I can't do anything more. This floor leader would do anything to make me look like I wasn't doing a good job. I remember one time I was even helping out a customer and the customer just didn't want to be talked to, so the floor leader started to follow them around and harass them until that customer left. And even some of the other floor leaders were just kind of put off by that. But then again, a lot of people didn't like this floor leader because they were constantly rude to some of the other coworkers and even made some people feel self-conscious about themselves. I remember one time he told one person that they were too fat, and another time that they told another person that they needed to fix their teeth. Which brings me to the first reason why I left Lush. Lush employees do not care. Now, if you're a customer that shops at Lush, I just want you to know that in a lot of these employees' eyes, you're just a dollar sign. You know when you go into Lush and you have 3 employees ask you 500 different questions? Well, they're trained to do that. They're trained to nitpick at you until you finally tell them why you're in there. even if you're not actually in there for anything. So whether it be shampoo, a bath bomb, a bar soap, they're gonna keep asking you questions until you either leave or you make a big deal about it. There's constant competitions to see who can sell the most to just one person and who can get the highest dollar value out of that person. I don't know if other Lushes did it, but I remember my Lush would always print out receipts to people who spent over $100 or even $200 and then write encouraging things on those receipts like, yes, you sold so much. Oh my God, look at what Jimmy did. This kind of behavior made it seem like it was less about the customer and more about how much product can we get out of here. As an employee, every time that I went in, I would get chatted in and I was always asked, well, what's your goal for the day? What are you gonna do today? And a lot of times I didn't really have a real goal. In fact, a lot of times I was coming in at 6 o'clock in the afternoon and my goal was to get out of work by 9, 10 o'clock, sometime before 11 o'clock. So instead I would ask, well, what do you think my goal should be? What would be a good goal for me? And if I didn't meet these goals, the floor leaders would always say something kind of demeaning like, well, look at this person who just started 2 weeks ago. They did this and went way beyond it. And I was just never a big fan of being compared to other people. Which brings me to my next point. There is no sense of respect or equality for employees. When I had finally quit Lush, it was because my dog got hit by a car. When my dog got hit, I went to the vet and I remember them telling me while there was no physical injuries to be spotted, there could still be internal injuries and that I had to watch my dog for the next 72 hours. I remember calling into work, bawling my eyes out, which is a big deal to me because I don't cry in front of people. And I remember saying, hey, my dog has just been hit by a car. I cannot come into work tomorrow. I need to watch after him. And instead of being sympathetic to the situation, I remember the girl saying, okay, well, here's a list of people that can cover you. This wasn't the first time that I was treated with this lack of sympathy either. Earlier in that year, my grandma had passed away and I called in and I remember them giving me the same exact treatment. Okay, well, here's some people that you can call to cover your shift. This didn't seem fair to me because I remember one coworker would always call in a couple of minutes before their shift saying, hey, I'm just having a bad mental day, I can't come in, and they would always excuse them. But I think one of the reasons I was treated unequal was because I dated a coworker. Now, mind you, Lush doesn't have any rules against dating coworkers, but I don't recommend doing so anyways. I remember being broken up with, and afterwards, management and my coworkers were just treating me unfairly. I remember being blamed for things that I didn't do and things that I couldn't have done because I wasn't at work at the time. It would get to the point where management would threaten me with my job for things that I didn't do or things that I actually already had permission to do. There was just a really big lack of communication. I even remember a lot of times when the assistant managers would always get mad at me and then I would explain, well, this wasn't me. I couldn't have done that. I haven't been at work for the last 3 days, so that wasn't me. And I remember they would check up on things and they would be like, oh, you're right, that wasn't you. It eventually got to the spot where I was coming into work with the mentality of, what am I gonna get yelled at for this time? There was just a lot of poor management and it just didn't seem like a fitting place to be working at. Now, even though there's all these negative things that draw me away from Lush, I do respect them as a company and I do respect their ethics and morals. I love a lot of their products and I'm gonna continue buying them, just probably not from this store. Well guys, if you've ever had an experience like this at one of your jobs, comment down below telling me about that experience. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, or you just want to look at my dog in other videos, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell for notifications about when I post videos. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.